In the late 17th century, King Louis XIV rules from a palace that mirrors his will. Versailles. Here, power wears silk. Faith and law stand in candlelight. The king's official mistress, the Marquise de Montespan, moves beside him like a second son. Their children are born outside marriage but pulled toward the center of the dynasty. Then a scandal, poison, powders, whispers, darkens the galleries. A special court, the Chambre Ardente, hunts secrets. Reputation, lineage, and the peace of the realm hang in the balance. Morning breaks on polished floors. A bell at dawn. Valets file in. The king's lever begins. Doors open in order, rank by rank, like waves. The scent of beeswax and orange trees hangs in the air. Courtiers measure each breath. In this ritual, the king is both man and symbol, and every gesture becomes law. People watch his sleeve, his glance, the way he pauses, the way he lifts the goblet. To live here is to live on a stage where nothing is small. She waits beyond the last door. The Marquise de Montespan, Athénaïs, born in a great but hollow old house, with wit sharp as a needle and a laugh that can turn a crowd. She holds a blue silk fan painted with tiny gold flowers. It is her shield and signal. Open. She is warm. Closed. She is steel. The fan hides a quick note from a minister, hides a sigh, hides a warning. She knows her power begins in myth and ends in a moment. Publicly, she is the glitter that proves the king's youth, his vigor, his taste for beauty. She curates the entertainments. She directs a look. She knows who to send to the music room, who to keep in the corridor. Privately, she holds his hand when the candles are snuffed, and he is simply Louis, with aching legs and the weight of Europe on his shoulders. She urges him to sleep when sleep will not come. When she laughs, he breathes. In her rooms, the table holds a letter seal shaped like a small sun. Its wax is warm. It has sealed promises, a new pavilion for music, a journey to a hunting lodge, a mare sent to her brother. But it has also sealed admissions. I cannot be everywhere, the king once wrote. Be my eyes. She kept that letter under a velvet glove in a drawer no servant touches. The glove smells faintly of iris. The queen, Maria Theresa, keeps her own counsel and her rosary. She is soft-spoken, and her devotion is plain. She is also a mother. She knows the mistress's children live. She knows the mistress is careful with them. She knows the realm watches. Her patience is part duty, part survival. She bows to the role as one bows to a storm that cannot be stopped, only endured. A child's toy, a carved wooden horse, sits under a chair. It belongs to one of the king's children with Madame de Montespan. The children are loved. The king has them taught, dressed, and placed near him. Their small shoes tap through the gallery. Their laughter creates a bridge between a forbidden room and an official one. Ministers grit their teeth and plan for papers to legitimize what the church does not bless. Outside, the empire grows. Sugar for the king's table, tobacco for his pipe, silk for the queen's sleeves. These things arrive by ships, and those ships carry the labor of many, including enslaved men and women in distant colonies, whose names the court does not know, whose suffering the court does not see. Versailles glows, but the glow is paid for beyond its fountains. We say this clearly because history requires it. At supper, Athénaïs uses the fan to signal a seat. A bishop clears his throat. A general talks about a fortress on the Dutch border. The king smiles, then frowns, then smiles again. She notices the way he rubs the ring on his finger when bored. She changes the music. She suggests an aria about victory. The general sits straighter. The bishop smiles as if this were his idea. The king relaxes. The realm moves. In a shuddered moment, the king traces the blue ribbon of her fan. He asks, as if asking himself, "What do you want?" She answers, "Not jewels, not houses." She names the thing that changes everything, our children, safe, their future, certain. The fan is still. The air holds the word. He is a king, but here he is also a father. His eyes go to the door as if the law will walk in and ask for a price. A priest warns gently, from behind a curtain. Passion is a field with traps. The law is a net. The royal confessor speaks of salvation. The queen speaks of duty. Athenais speaks of life. Ministers count dates on a calendar. On one square, a date is marked in red ink. There is a hearing. Legitimations are being drafted. If the king signs, lines of inheritance will shift. Brothers will become half-brothers. Titles will bow to new names. The wax seal waits. She closes the fan slowly. A promise hangs in the air, like a curtain that has not yet fallen. She whispers to the king, not with words, but with a look. Choose us. He nods and reaches for the seal, and then a knock at the door, light but urgent. A letter arrives with the stamp of Paris police. Inside, a rumor made ink, a name half hidden, a powder, a prayer. The fan trembles in her hand. He opens the letter. He does not read it aloud. He places it under a candle. The wax softens, the seal gleams. He wants to be a man of clarity. He wants to rule without shadows. But the letter is all shadow. He says very quietly, "We will see." She hears what he does not say. She hears the word danger, spoken not to a general, but to her. The court moves like a clock that runs on gossip. This is how the first whispers arrive. A coach that should turn left turns right. A maid who should lay out white lace brings gray. A scroll that should reach a minister reaches a clerk instead. Everything is small. Everything is seen. A valet finds a glove pressed behind a tapestry. He smells bitter resins on the fabric. He assumes it was dropped at a crowded midnight supper. He slips it into his sleeve and says nothing. The glove sits there like a small, quiet alarm. He plans to return it. He plans to forget it. He does neither. At a street fair in Paris, a woman sells small packets with promises. For sleep, she coos. For luck, for courage. She is watched, not only by the poor who want a chance, but by a man with ink-stained fingers who belongs to the police. He writes a note. Woman in red shawl returning to Rue de la Tannerie. He will write many such notes. He will forget none of them. Inside Versailles, courtiers cut paper with new scissors. They fold programs for a masque. The Marquise de Montespan practices a step, more out of poise than need. She is hungry for order. She is careful with her words. A governess, Madame de Maintenon, quiet and dry as a candle wick, cares for the children. She moves through rooms like smoke. She and the Marquise share a task. They do not share a heart. A clerk in the royal household notices the pattern. The Marquise leaves the king's room later than usual. The king looks, for the first time in weeks, past her shoulder. The queen's confessor passes twice in 1 hour. The clerk scratches a date. He has learned that the shape of a day can change the course of a war. He keeps his notes in a pocket and tells them to no one. Not yet. One night, wind rattles a shutter. The blue fan slips from a chair. A folded paper falls from its ribs. It is a script for a small comedy to be performed next week. Or so it seems. But between lines about lovers and masks, there are marginalia in quick, slanted hand. Oil of... The words stop. Keep the king. It is not a recipe. It is a prayer, or a warning, or both. The woman in the red shawl gains a client with a soft voice and hard eyes. She waits behind a curtain. She speaks to one who has said, by neighbors, by laundresses, by those who wash the hands of the high, to be of rank. They speak not of murder. They speak of keeping what is already in hand, of a heart that wanders and must be guided back. The woman lights a candle and hums. The police note, voices low, laughter after. At a small chapel in the palace, candles gutter. The queen prays for a healthy realm. She hears her own breath. She does not turn when footsteps enter. The mistress kneels behind her. The air between them is cold, and polite, and strict. Each could condemn. Each refuses. Each knows the walls are thin. A dancer arrives late to rehearsal. He whispers that the king will move the court to Versailles full time. There will be fountains and fireworks. The Marquise de Montespan smiles. This is her theater. She will star in it, she thinks. Then she sees Madame de Maintenon near a window, steady and unreadable, and understands that she has a rival of a different sort. Not for jewelry, for the king's soul. Morning. A note on the Marquise's writing desk. Do not receive the woman from the tanneries. It is unsigned. The handwriting is familiar to anyone who has seen a minister's brief. She burns the note without asking who sent it. She has learned that questions can be traps. The valet finally leaves the glove at the threshold of the Marquise's room. She opens it. A thin powder sifts onto the floor. She freezes, lifts nothing, and calls for her most trusted maid. They stare. The maid whispers, "It is nothing." The Marquise nods. She puts the glove back, wraps it in thick paper, and hides it deep in a box that smells of lavender. The glove becomes a secret and a lure. At the fair, the woman in red is taken. Not roughly. Quietly. As if led to chapel. She smiles at her arresters as if they are clients. She is polite. She thinks she will be released by nightfall. She does not know the name of the new tribunal, the one that meets by night. She will know it soon. The Chambre Ardente, the burning chamber. A household clerk hears a rumor that stops him. A certain woman, under questioning, has named a lady of rank. He writes the words down. He does not write the name. He looks at the ink until it dries, and feels that the palace has grown colder by a candle's breath. The Marquise steps into a carriage headed for a discreet house near the river. She has heard there are modern healers, women who understand fatigue, headaches, the pain of childbirth. The carriage changes direction without her order. A guard on horseback rides near. He tips his hat. She knows she is being watched. She tells the driver to go back to court. Her hand tightens on the fan until the ribs creak. On a balcony, the king looks at the garden as if the geometry of the flower beds could solve a puzzle. Minister Colbert speaks of taxes and ports. Minister Louvois speaks of soldiers and roads. The king nods. But his eyes are on the parterres and the straight lines that make chaos into beauty. He wants his life to match this order. He knows it does not. In a hallway, the Marquise meets Madame de Maintenon. Polite words, warmer eyes than yesterday. The governess thanks her for a new tutor for the youngest boy. The Marquise replies, "We both serve the same house." And then there is a moment, a hinge, that can swing either way. Two women who shape the mood of a king, both armed with self-control. At dusk, paper lanterns flicker. A player recites lines about a queen who forgives a king. The audience claps. The king leans back, amused, then pensive. The Marquise watches his profile and thinks, what does he need? He needs peace in his own rooms. She resolves to be softer tonight. But a messenger waits with a sealed packet. The seal bears not the king's son, but the city's stern mark. She breaks the seal in private. Inside are records of the first interrogations. Names are blacked out. Acts are suggested, not described. A note in the margin says, "A lady of the highest degree has been mentioned." The Marquise feels the floor tilt. She breathes. She thinks of the blue fan, and of the glove in the lavender box, and of a promise. The children safe. She presses her palm to the cool marble of the mantel. She knows that once a tribunal opens, it does not always close where one expects. A small clatter comes from the corridor. The trusted maid, pale, has dropped a key. She tries to speak. The words do not come. Finally, she whispers. "They asked me questions." "Who?" "Polite men." "What did you say?" "Nothing. The marquise sees the weight of this nothing. She sees the shape of her life changing. She lifts the maid's chin and says, "You have done well." She means, "We are at sea now." She goes to the king, late, hands cold. He stands by a portrait of his family, every pose correct. She tells him there are rumors. He nods. He knows. She tells him a tribunal listens at night. He nods. He knows. She says a quiet question out loud. "Do you trust me?" He answers too quickly to be false. "Yes." A knock interrupts. A captain of guards bows. The woman in red has spoken again. The palace glitters. A winter ball under painted ceilings. Mirrors multiply faces. Music threads through rooms like a silver line. Behind the brightness, doors are shut. A messenger waits with a packet tied in black ribbon. He is not allowed inside the ball. He waits in an antechamber where the air is cold and the benches are hard. The king dances once, twice, with the queen. He dances with a foreign ambassador's wife to soothe a rumor about a treaty. He dances with a duchess to flatter a province. He does not dance with the marquise. People notice. The marquise keeps her smile. The fan never wavers. Those who watch closely see the faintest tremble when she drinks water. In a side room, the king removes his mask. He reads the packet. Depositions. The chamber's clerk writes in a stiff hand. The woman known as A line strikes through a name. Confessed to attending gatherings where prayers were inverted. Details are blurred, as if someone has erased them with a thumb. Then a line like a bell. A lady with a blue ribboned fan came. No name. But how many ladies wear a fan like that? He sits, still. He does not breathe for a moment. Then he stands, calls for fire, and holds the paper to the flame. The words go dark, then vanish. He orders, "Continue the court, but guard the names of the highborn. Protect the realm from ruinous scandal. The order is both justice and shield. It is also a confession that truth can break a kingdom." Across the gallery, the marquise watches the angle of his mouth and reads his mood like a soldier reads a map. She knows. She knows the blue fan is not just an ornament. It is now a clue. She wraps the fan in a silk scarf and hides it under a pile of music. This is a small act that feels like a prayer. A footman knocks, carrying a second letter. It is not for the king. It is for her. The seal bears the mark of the city's lieutenant of police. She breaks it. Inside, "You are named in shadow. Present nothing. Destroy nothing. The king is informed." She looks up. In the mirror behind her, she sees Madame de Maintenon speaking softly to a bishop near the door. The governess catches her eye. A blink, like a nod. They are not allies. They are not enemies. They are co-anchors in a storm. The music stops. Starts again. A planned fireworks display is cancelled for wind. The night feels like a pause that will not end. A young guard, drunk on a corner, mutters that the sun cannot be questioned. A clerk, sober and frightened, writes that the sun has already been questioned, many times under oath by men who cannot say his name. We return to the lavender box. The marquise opens it. The glove sits inside, wrapped in paper. She is careful. She lifts the glove with tongs used for fire. She lowers it into another box, this one of plain wood. She slides the wood under a heavy chest. She will never touch that glove again. She will dream of it often. Midnight. The king enters a small room where he signs papers away from eyes. He takes a sheet. The legitimations. A path opens for his children into a new rank. He signs. It is done. He seals it. The ring presses into hot wax. He closes his eyes. Not for prayer, exactly, but for rest. That same night, in the city, the woman in the red shawl repeats her words to a different listener. A lady of the highest degree. The men lean in. She names properties, colors, habits. She mentions a blue fan. She laughs at the end, as if she has told a legend. In a notebook, a clerk shakes. He writes. He leaves the margin open for a name he cannot bring himself to ink. A boy in livery races up a stair at Versailles. He trips. The packet he carries slides under a door. It is the king's door. He is not allowed inside. He freezes. He thinks of his family far away. He thinks of the punishment for entering without leave. He leaves the packet where it is and hopes the morning finds it before the wrong eyes do. Dawn. The bell sounds. The lever begins. A valet sees the packet. He knocks. No answer. He bends, slides a hand under, pulls it out. He sees the seal of the Chambre Ardente. He feels his stomach drop. He tucks it into his coat and waits for an opening to hand it to the king's secretary. He does not tell a soul. He will carry the weight of this hour for years. In the chapel, violins sound a soft mass. The queen looks ahead. The marquise stands behind a pillar, half in shadow. The king arrives last, as protocol demands. A beam of sun lands on his cheek. For a moment, the symbol and the man divide. He sees the pew. He sees the altar. He sees the marquise's profile. He sees a path that ends with everyone losing. He closes his eyes. The music swells. A whisper spreads like a draft. There is a name in the papers. The name is not written. It is spoken near candles. It is stopped at doors by guards who do not know why they have been placed there. Madame de Maintenon slips away to the children's room. She touches a forehead, smooths a sheet. She is steady. She knows that steadiness is a kind of sword in a house that runs on heat. After Mass, the king moves quickly down a corridor. He signals. Doors shut. Inside, he faces the marquise. No courtiers, no mirrors, no performance. He speaks first. You will not speak to anyone in the city. You will burn what I tell you to burn. You will keep your head. She says evenly, I have kept it, even when it wanted to fly. He almost smiles. He gives her a letter, not sealed. From a priest, he says. He says he did not grant you. He stops. He is careful. The accusation has many versions. A blessing designed to bind a king. A prayer that inverts love to control. He hates words that have no weight. He hates that he is now speaking them. He ends with a simple line. Do you swear you did not wish me harm? She answers like a blade. I swear I wished to keep you. He believes her. Or he chooses to believe her. He kisses her hand, not as lover, but as sovereign to subject. An oath recognized. He leaves. She stands for a long time without moving, as if waiting for a tide to turn back. It does not. Outside, a captain hands the king the packet that slid under the door. The king breaks the seal. He reads one line. He folds the paper. He speaks to the captain without looking up. This court will be ended when it must. The captain bows. He thinks of fires that burn without being seen. He hopes this is not one of them. The Chambre Ardente sits for months. The city counts its days by its whispers. Diaries fill with small storms. A countess refuses to wear pearls. A clerk changes his walk to avoid a certain alley. A baker swears he bakes with prayer. The court learns to live as if watched by 1,000 quiet eyes. Many are innocent. Some are not. All are tangled. In council, ministers argue. One says, name them. Purge the rot. Let the punishments be known. Another says, shield the realm. Protect the king's image. Sever the branch, not the trunk. The king says little. He has always preferred open fields and the sound of hounds. Now he reads depositions and feels the cold of a cellar on his skin. Madame de Montespan is questioned, but not formally, not under oath. A cardinal speaks to her in a room with one window. He asks complicated questions with simple words. He waits. She answers with careful calm. "I love the king," she says once very quietly. "I love his children." She does not say, "I love myself," because she knows the listener would call that a sin. It may also be true. Madame de Maintenon steps closer to the king's table. She says nothing about the marquise by name, not in public. In private, she speaks for piety, for steadiness, for the children to be raised with care, for luxuries to be tempered. She speaks as if the court were a school moving toward a lesson. The king, tired, often hungry for quiet, listens. A rumor takes form that the marquise, once scorned by a priest, once denied a sacrament, found her own ceremony elsewhere, that a child was brought and used in a rite. The rumor is not proven. It is not even well told. Parts are added under pressure. Parts are withdrawn under fear. The court half believes, which is sometimes worse than certainty. We say this firmly. The sources are broken. Pain speaks loudly under threat. We do not make judgments from shattered glass. The marquise shifts. She becomes sharper in reply, more cutting in wit. She cannot bear to be pitied. She asks the king for what she always asked: attention, decoration, music to drown out fear. But the king grows quieter. War begins again, and he spends nights over maps. He seeks consolation in faith. He looks to Madame de Maintenon and sees a room with less noise. One evening, a scuffle in a corridor. A young page, not a servant, not yet a courtier, finds a folded paper under a cushion in the marquise's room. The crest is not hers. It is the city's. He hesitates, then carries it to her. She opens it, reads, and goes very still. It is a polite directive. You will refrain from the sacrament until the matter is closed. She stares at the words. She puts the paper under a stack of Italian poems. She does not cry. She does not pray. She lifts the fan. The queen falls ill and dies in 1683. The court grieves. The king grieves, and the grief feels like a clean room after smoke. There is a hollow center in the palace. Every person on the stage must shift positions. The marquise thinks, for a flash, that this will bring her closer to the king, not as queen, never that, but as companion without an audience. Then she sees the path bending the other way. This is when many say she turned. Turned does not mean she drew a blade. It means her heart hardened toward the king who was softening toward another voice. It means she said things into mirrors that would have cracked them if they could hear. It means she set people against people with a raised eyebrow, and that she spoke bitterly in places where words bounce. It means she considered, allegedly, ways to pull him back with strange prayers and oils, and that, when those did not hold, she considered letting the whispers grow. At night, she handles the ring he gave her, a pearl set low in gold so it will not catch on lace. She remembers his hand around hers when the baby was sick. She remembers him sitting by the bed, looking older than he should. She cannot forgive that man for growing away from her. She cannot forgive the new counselor for making the room smell of candles and rules. Madame de Maintenon has the children kneel to say their prayers. She teaches them to write careful letters to their father. She folds their notes with exact corners and seals them with small red wax drops. She does not sign them. The king keeps them in a box on his desk. He opens the box when he is tired. He remembers why he needs to live in a way that can be spoken in chapel. The tribunal dwindles, its fires banked by order of the king. The woman in the red shawl is gone, her voice folded into records that will later be sealed. The men who wrote the depositions count their days until transfer. One clerk keeps a copy of a page that mentions the blue fan. He shows it to no one. He will die with it in a drawer. None of this changes the fact that the rumor sits like a stain that soap cannot find. In a last private effort, The marquise visits a convent in the faubourg. The air smells of bread. She talks through bars. Her words are simple. Pray that I keep my name. The sister nods. The marquise leaves coins. She asks a priest, not her old confessor. How does a person become clean? He says, by beginning. She says, I began long ago. He says, begin again. She walks out, angry and sad. A threat is spoken. It is not in a letter. It is not recorded. But 3 people say the phrase later, in different versions. If my children are set aside, if I am pushed to the outside like a cracked plate, then I will speak as others have spoken. What will she say? We do not know. Secrets of rooms, names of those who came and went when the lamp was low. It is possible this was said. It is possible it was invented to justify a decision already made. The king asks her, do not make war on my house. She answers, this house was ours. He says, it was my house, and I let you live in it. He says it without cruelty. He says it as a fact. It lands like a stone. She sees in one line the shape of their difference. She curtsies. Perfect. She leaves the room. She does not look back. The carriage arrives by lantern light. Rain has just stopped. Hooves shine. The Marquise de Montespan steps in with a small trunk. No crowd gathers. This is not a spectacle. It is a quiet dismissal that changes the court as much as a public execution would have. The doors close. The wheels turn. She is not banished to the end of the earth. She is sent to a convent in the city where noble women wash their hands and teach their hearts to be small. Versailles continues. Dances, treaties, births, christenings. The king's new center is a chapel and a private room where Madame de Maintenon sits with reading glasses and a careful smile. She never becomes queen-in-law, but her chair is near his. He marries her in secret, most agree, sometime after the queen's death. There is no crown. There is a candle and an oath. The house quiets. The legitimations stand. The marquise's children are placed in the line of princes, not as heirs to the throne, but near enough that the court bows when they pass. The Duke of Maine grows serious. The Count of Toulouse learns the language of ships. The marquise did not lie when she asked for their safety. She won that. She lost the rest. In the convent, she keeps the blue fan folded in a drawer she rarely opens. It is no longer a weapon or a charm. It is a mirror that shows her face when she was young. She takes it out on some afternoons, opens it, and fans herself slowly. The sound is like distant rain. A sister knocks. The marquise shuts the fan and says, "Yes?" She writes letters to her children. She does not write to the king. He sends money, sometimes more than needed. She gives some away. She learns the names of women who clean the steps. She prays sometimes with effort. She gives sharp advice to anyone who asks. "Stand up straight," she tells a girl. "You cannot be wrong if you are patient, and you do not explain yourself." The girl will remember that sentence for 60 years. At Versailles, a clerk walks through the room where the lavender box used to be. It has been cleared. The carpet is new. The windows are freshly washed. He thinks of the glove he almost threw away, of the letter he once held too long, of the night he watched a woman leave without a sound. He allows himself once to say to another clerk, "History is made of sighs." The final image, the marquise, older, at a window of the convent. Snow, a bell. She holds the pearl ring and watches a child cross the courtyard. The child wears a blue ribbon for a holiday. The marquise smiles, not with victory, not with defeat, but with the knowledge that her story will be told in two tones, glory and shadow, and that both are true in their way. She places the ring back in its pouch. She blows out the candle. Darkness, but not silence. The city breathes. Years pass. Ministers die, wars end, fortunes move. In 1707, the Marquise de Montespan dies in Bourbon-l'Archambault, after a life of penance and flashes of pride. Her body is carried with respect. In the convent where she once retired, a young sister finds a small plain box behind a loose brick. Inside is a folded fan. Blue silk, gold flowers. The ribs are intact. There is also a scrap of paper with a wax blob like a small sun. No words remain, only the weight of a seal. What is proven? That Louis XIV loved, in his way, and made laws around his love. That he legitimated children who were not born in a marriage, and those children changed the future of the nobility. That a tribunal, the Chambre Ardente, met in dim rooms and collected confessions, many under duress. That a woman called Voisin was executed after accusations of trafficking in powders, oils, prayers, and more. That the king moved the court to Versailles and made his life into theater and law. What is disputed? That Madame de Montespan took part in ceremonies designed to bind the king's heart, with acts later told in lurid detail by enemies. That she threatened to expose secrets when she sensed her fall. That a glove, a powder, a whispered curse ever crossed from rumor to reality. The records are torn. The confessions conflict. Later, memoirists sharpen the angles for readers who like sharpness. Historians argue and will continue to argue. What remains clear is this: love and power shared a table at Versailles. The king used one to strengthen the other. The marquise did the same. Sometimes it bent into protection, sometimes into pride, sometimes into something that felt like betrayal. Life at that level is a series of decisions made in bright light and in deep shade. A final image. The wax seal, kept by habit long after the letter has been read. In a drawer, for years, a small sun pressed into old wax waits for a hand that never comes. Then, one day, someone opens the drawer. The wax cracks with a soft sound. The seal is finally broken after a century of silence. The fan opens. The air moves. Dust dances in a beam of light.